it looks like we're going to go to my state of Tennessee. We're going to talk with Romeo, no pronouns given. It sounds like you want to find some common ground with us. So what you got for me and Jim?
Hey, brother. Thank you. I want to, first of all, thank you all for having me. And, I just want to come up as a Tennessean. I watched you guys very closely, secular. I know you're a Tennessee boy, so loud and proud. I thank you for having me.
Yeah,
here's my question for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask you guys, do you find, what's your argument for God do you find strongest, and why does it fail?
Strongest
for you guys?
None of them. I don't. Yeah. I mean, they're all equally bad. Yeah. They all have insufficient evidence. Some of them actually have evidence against them now that some of these arguments are centuries old. Some of these arguments predate Christianity, or come from other religions. And the Kalam in particular comes from Islam. Yeah. Epicurus has got the point, makes the counter argument to an omnibenevolent God. So we've got all this stuff that's out there that predates Christianity. And any of that stuff that does, the last 100 years with quantum mechanics and just really kind of bulldozes a lot of stuff. Cause and effect at the quantum level goes right out the window because sometimes it's effect then cause in terms of time. Sometimes things happen with no cause whatsoever. In fact, some scientists just got the Nobel Prize for physics for proving that spin of entangled particles happens for no reason. Measuring one, we know what the other one is if they're quantumly entangled without observing it. And there's no reason for that. That happens without a cause. And there's a number of other things too. Quantum mechanics has just proved that they just did it. Shouldn't say proved. They did a single experiment that shows quite clearly that nothing, the philosophical nothing, may not actually exist. Which means that the physicist who proved that something can come from the physics definition of nothing can happen. So there's just a number of these things that happen now that makes a lot of those arguments just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I would say that while I may say that there are arguments that convince a lot of people, arguments that convinced me back in the day, right? They're very poor. They're still very bad. So like for me, one of the biggest things that kept me believing for a long time was just that hand wave of we can't possibly understand the mind of an infallible being. We can't possibly be on that same level as God, so therefore any of these questions that I have can just be answered with, well, God knows best. That's really just flat out garbage of an argument.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's not convincing to people, right? It absolutely convinces people. Even though the Kalam doesn't use God at all, people still believe in God because of that. So it's like, I think they're all equally crap. I think probably that, mysterious ways and personal experience are probably some of the two that convince the most people, though.
Right.
Yeah. And I know you guys probably believe in like the Darwin effect, but someone once asked 20th century atheist philosopher, pardon me if I spell his name, Bertrand Russell, whether he found himself
Bertrand Russell. Yeah.
Sorry, I butchered that name. You guys.
That's okay.
You guys are better at it than I am. And he said no because there's no proof. But the argument I stand with as a Christian, I'm not here to belittle you. I'm not here to degrade you. I find it where I want to stand with you guys and understand what I used to be an atheist myself, and I found it very tedious to find evidence, I guess you could say, of any sort, like a mystery guy in the sky. Mm-hmm. Oh, we pray to the pizza guy. But for me, when I found God, I found for me, it was just faith. And for you guys, do you guys at one point or another would ever consider looking into deeper grounds of not just looking for proof of the pie in the sky and just look deep in yourself and ask yourself, maybe is there a possibility legitly that things are happening for
Would
a
you,
particular
Romeo,
reason? And I'm not saying
Romeo,
like God.
would you believe me if I told you that for the last 15 years of my life, that's what I've done every day? Like, would you accept if Jim sat here and said to you, actually, Romeo, I did that for a really long time and it didn't work? Would you accept that? Would you believe that we did, or would you say that we must not have tried hard enough? Because I think that I've heard this a lot from, some of my friends that believe, and they're like, well, if you would just try harder. And my response is often like, well, I have. Like, so would you accept that maybe Jim and I have already done that and we've still gotten to this conclusion?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't doubt that you're trying, but there maybe it's more. As an ex-atheist, I know your viewers are calling me ex-atheist, and that's fine.
What made you an ex-atheist?
Right. What convinced you?
Yeah,
finally?
what worked for you? Because if it worked for you, it might work for us.
A lot of it had to do with when I had a lot of family members pass away due to cancer, sickness, old age, poor health, COVID, dementia, just bad things happening. I started questioning, and I was still an atheist at that time, and I questioned everything. And I realized at that moment that maybe there is an answer to everything. Maybe there is an answer to the reason of why it is time for them to pass. Maybe it's not just.
But what made you accept that conclusion, though? What is it that actually made you get to the conclusion? Like, I understand that thought, right? I understand the thought of saying, like, well, maybe there is just a bigger answer. Maybe there just is something out there that just ties all of this up into a nice, cute little bow. But it sounds like you're not just at the point of asking yourself that question. You're at the point of accepting that as an answer.
Right.
How did you get there?
For me, it's okay. Why did my uncle die? Well, because
It was my uncle.
I'm talking about my personal experience. I could have done the exact same thing, right? And gone, oh, there must be a bigger reason. Well, there is a bigger reason. Part of the reason is that my uncle comes from a generation that they don't like to go to hospitals and they like to tough things out. He had a previous severe injury, and they thought that the pain he was experiencing might be leftovers from that, just continuing injury from that. And doctors had a number of valid excuses to not treat him earlier, because had he been treated earlier, he could have survived it. They just caught it too late, and they didn't realize they had caught it too late. And so my answer to the why is medical mistakes, and I say that without any animosity to the doctors, because I don't know, everybody makes mistakes, and they may have made those mistakes for very good reasons, right? For very good logical medical reasons that if someone were to sit down and explain to me, I go, okay, yeah, I could see how you could make that, miss this, right? And this is, what was told to me by my cousins. So that's why. And there's no deeper meaning than that. If there was a God, however, and that God was omnibenevolent, then none of those things would have happened.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
What got me to really be strong with it was coming to the acceptance that for me, I looked in the answer of scientific reasoning, like the Darwin effect, the
Darwin effect.
Hawkins effect.
Yeah, what's the Darwin effect? Just give me like a 30-second.
I think that I'm not really up to date on that. I'm
not talking about evolution.
The Big Bang Theory. I believe that somehow the Big Bang Theory did have a good conclusion.
What does the Big Bang Theory have to do with the Darwin effect? What does that have to do with?
It's like everything has a reason. So there has to be a reason for us existing. There had to be a reason for death and life.
No,
and death.
Where does that reason come from? Where does that reason come from?
The reasoning for me comes from the understanding that if you look at science,
the reason for anything happening is the reason for anything happening is assigned by a mind. Things happen without us knowing what the reason is. We don't have to know the reason. Things don't have to have a purpose. Right? Things do not have to have a purpose. We assign that purpose. The purpose of a tree is not to make oxygen. The tree has no purpose. The tree just does what it does. So none of that has purpose. None of that has reason.
Right, and just saying that everything has a reason kind of doesn't tell us much, you know? Like, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, like, cool, so everything has a reason. How do you know what the reason is, and how do you know why that's the reason? That's probably more interesting. And if we get to a place where, okay, we still kind of have this underlying thought that there was probably a reason for this, but we don't know, well, that's okay. We don't know, and we shouldn't just insert a conclusion just for the sake of it. Like, it's all right that we leave some of the answers blank until we get more information.
Right.
Okay, so here's a better question. How are we created in an atheist point of view? Let me ask you that.
Evolution.
Yeah.
Evolution before evolution, abiogenesis. Before abiogenesis, the solar system formed. Before that, it was the Big Bang.
Yeah. I mean, that's a quick overview.
Okay, well, that was perfect, because that was exactly what I was looking for to ask you this next question. So if we were created by apes, allegedly, by then evolution, well, here's the problem.
No, there's no problem with evolution.
Species. We are human. So there is a difference between animals and humans.
No, there isn't.
Yes,
We're all
Where do you
animals.
draw that line? What criteria do you lay out that says this thing is an animal, this thing is a bacteria, this thing is a plant? Because when you do that, and it gets peer reviewed by those folks who have been looking at this one system for like a long time, then you can make that claim. But if you can't set out criteria for these gigantic classifications of living organisms, then honestly you are beholden to the same system that we all are, which is there really doesn't seem to be a distinguishing point between humans and animals until humans come around and go, we like you a little bit better than this puppy dog over here, so we're gonna put you in a special category. But yeah, where do you draw that line? How do you figure this criteria out?
Because what you're going by is that somehow we are created by nothing. But
No.
nothing.
Wrong. Absolutely. Hold on just a second. I have a rant. No. The only people who are saying something comes from nothing, I get so tired of hearing this, is theists. There is not a single that I'm aware of Big Bang cosmologist that postulates something from nothing. Because as I said earlier to the previous caller, we have at least one experiment that demonstrates that nothing can't exist. The philosophical definition of nothing can't exist. And we have one other experiment that shows that the physical definition of nothing can in fact produce something. And if you don't know what the difference between the philosophical nothing is and the physics definition of nothing is, you need to go look that up because they're vastly, vastly different. Okay? So, and also, if the Big Bang came of singularity is not anything. The energy what started the Big Bang is not nothing. So there is no way to say that something comes from nothing in a philosophical sense, because we have at least one experiment that's been done that proves that it can't be. It'd be really nice to get some more evidence of that. So stop with it. It's just dumb. Yeah. And it shows your profound ignorance of science, which is fine. I read far more than I should, and I watch far more scientific videos than I probably should as well. But stop with it. It just makes you look ignorant.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's a good place for us to end.
Yeah.
Romeo, we do appreciate the call, and I think I'm glad the way that you came into this. I hope that you come back and you hit us up in another week or two, and again, just maybe write some notes out and get your arguments in order and really, really provide some backing support for them. Because I felt like we were just kind of just bouncing a little, and we didn't get a lot of substance. But